What on earth is happening with Manchester City right now? Their defense is resembling that of amateurs, and the players seem to be collecting red cards left and right. Twice they found themselves trailing and had to fight tooth and nail to even manage a draw after a tense 90 minutes. Erling Haaland finally broke his goal drought, but Kyle Walker continues to make costly mistakes. Pep Guardiola's men are under intense pressure, with their performance becoming increasingly worrying. The recent drop in temperatures caused some Premier League matches to be cancelled, and for Man City, it's becoming a season full of head-scratching moments. Despite a much-needed win over Nottingham Forest the previous round, ending a 7-match winless streak, it quickly became apparent that the victory was more of a brief flicker of hope than a sign of genuine recovery. City's defense remains fragile even against opponents they dominated last season. The loss to Crystal Palace in particular is a major blow. It's a result that leaves Pep and the squad in a state of confusion, unable to shake off the feeling that their form is far from what's expected of them. If you were to ask Manchester City fans when their team would return to form, many would likely struggle to provide a clear answer. This is not the City team that once made opponents tremble at the very thought of facing them. Let's take a closer look at the key moments in their disappointing draw against Crystal Palace and consider what's next for a team that seems to have lost its way. If this form continues, it's hard to imagine where City's season could end up. With a squad full of talent but consistently underperforming, Guardiola's tactical genius is being tested like never before. As the final whistle blew at Selhurst Park, Pep Guardiola stormed onto the pitch, pointing furiously at the referee before being restrained by Erling Haaland. The scene was filled with tension, as Guardiola, once known for his gentlemanly demeanor, showed a different side. Gone was the composed, respectful Pep we've seen throughout his career. In recent weeks, he's transformed into a man filled with frustration and ready to lash out at the slightest provocation, whether it's from referees or the media. And who could blame him? When his team plays like this, it's hard to keep a cool head. The tension was evident even before the final whistle. The City defense had barely settled into the match when, in the 4th minute, Crystal Palace struck. A well-timed 3-ball from Daniel Munoz set up a clinical finish, beating Stefan Ortega. Upon reviewing the replays, it was clear that Kyle Walker had made a positional error, which rendered the offside trap ineffective and allowed Palace to take the lead. This early setback instantly dampened the mood for City fans, even though their team had just ended a 7-match winless streak with a victory over Nottingham Forest. The cracks in the defense were still there, only this time Crystal Palace lacked the quality to fully exploit them. After the goal, City struggled to regain composure. Their midfield duo of Ilkay Gundogan and Bernardo Silva was pressed relentlessly by the Palace midfield. And despite their best efforts to control the game, City's bold progression was stifled. The defending champions were finding it difficult to create clear chances. The style of play on display was eerily reminiscent of their FA Cup final defeat to Wigan last season, where City, playing a diamond formation, were similarly stifled by an opponent's defensive setup. The difference this time was that Rodri's role as the anchor in midfield was instead being handled by Gundogan. In a game that seemed to be slipping away from Manchester City, the reigning champions found an unexpected lifeline with a well-executed aerial goal. A pinpoint cross from Matheus Nunes was met by Erling Haaland, who rose above the defense to power a header past Dean Henderson, leaving the Palace goalkeeper with no chance. The goal marked Haaland's 13th of the season, bringing him level with Mohamed Salah in the Premier League scoring race, and more importantly, ending a 3-match goal drought. However, the equaliser was far from enough to turn the tide in City's favour. Despite the temporary relief, City's defensive frailties were once again exposed. Just 10 minutes after Haaland's goal, they conceded again. A corner from Will Hughes was delivered to central defender Maxence Lacroix, who rose unchallenged to head the ball home and restore Palace's lead. Kyle Walker, marking Lacroix, stood motionless, failing to put any real pressure on the Palace defender. To make matters worse, Walker, who was at fault for the goal, had the audacity to throw his hands up in frustration, seemingly blaming his teammates. At 34, Walker's lack of impact on the pitch, combined with his behavior, raised questions about his drive and commitment. Yet, just as it seemed like City were on the brink of defeat, they found another equalizer. This time, it was young Rico Lewis, whose intelligent run and finish in the 67th minute leveled the score at 2-2. There was no celebration from Lewis, who, along with his teammates, quickly retrieved the ball from the net and placed it at center circle to resume play. City needed 3 points, not just a draw. As the match wore on, Guardiola's men piled on the pressure, throwing everything forward in search of a winner. But just as City were rallying, disaster struck once more. After a strong showing earlier in the game, Lewis was sent off in the 75th minute for a reckless tackle, leaving City to play with 10 men. His ill-timed challenge on a Palace player was met with a straight red. Pep Guardiola stood on the touchline, hands on his head in disbelief, unable to fathom what was happening. The dramatic chase for the win at Crystal Palace ended in a 2-2 draw, a result that, while valuable for Palace, left Manchester City feeling deflated. The frustration was palpable as Pep stormed onto the pitch after the final whistle to argue with the referee, a moment that spoke volumes about his own bewilderment and anger at the state of his team. The usually composed Spanish manager was visibly rattled, a stark contrast to his calm and strategic demeanor in previous seasons. City's form this season has been a far cry from the dominance we've come to expect from the defending champions. In their most recent outings across all competitions, Pep's side has won just one match, a form slump unheard of for a team of City's caliber. With only one win in their last 5 games, the team seems unrecognizable. What's even more concerning is that, after their defeat at Crystal Palace, City now trails Liverpool by 8 points, with Pep's men having played one more game. Historically, Manchester City has always been a slow starter, known for their tendency to build momentum as the season progresses. Just 2 seasons ago, they surged into the new year with a string of victories that saw them eventually overtake Arsenal and secure the title. That was when the squad was injury-free and firing on all cylinders. But now, Pep's team faces a far tougher challenge. The injuries are piling up, key players are out of form, and there's a general sense of uncertainty in the air. We've never seen Pep so flustered. In the press conference before the Crystal Palace match, he even took time to engage in a war of words with Jose Mourinho. The match between Pep Guardiola and Jose Mourinho, though only a verbal exchange, clearly reflects the tension Pep is facing. In response to Mourinho's cryptic remarks about Man City's chances of winning the title, Pep didn't hesitate to reply. Of course, Mourinho is just one of the many people who want Man City to be relegated. I will tell him that Man City is innocent until proven guilty. Pep's reply was somewhat sarcastic, but it also showed his dissatisfaction with the continuous criticism he's been receiving recently. This is a very different image of Pep compared to the calm, composed figure he has long been known as. However, with the current difficulties, he can no longer maintain his composure. As Man City has gone through a series of tough matches, many are beginning to doubt their ability to win. Slogans like "Pep out" have appeared repeatedly on Twitter, something that has never happened during his time at the helm. Man City is no longer seen as the reigning champion. They are now facing the risk of failing to finish in the top 4 of the Premier League, something no one would have predicted before. Experts like Promon have boldly stated that Man City is out of the title race this season. Pep's team is out of the championship race. I don't give them any chances, and I don't believe they can create a 12-game winning streak. If Pep Guardiola can turn the tide and win the Premier League title, it will be the greatest achievement of his coaching career. However, the question remains, is there anyone who still believes Man City can turn things around at this point? The answer is still up in the air, and many are now looking at Pep and his players with skepticism. Since Erik ten Hag's departure, Man City has become unstable. They are no longer the reliable team they once were, and the cohesion between the players seems to have broken down. Everything has suddenly become unclear, even bleak. Pep is facing the greatest challenge of his managerial career in trying to revive the team. Perhaps what Pep needs most right now isn't victories or praise, but a miracle to help Man City rediscover themselves. But can a miracle appear when the team is on the brink of collapse?